Sherry, are you ready?
Yes.
Thank you. This special board meeting of the Board of Education for January 18, 2022 is called to order. For tonight's meeting, any item that will be voted on has been posted on the PPS website under the Board and Meetings tabs. This meeting is being streamed live on PPS TV Services website and on Channel 28 and will be replayed throughout the next 2 weeks. Please check the district's website for replay times. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to tonight's special meeting for us to consider a resolution to authorize amending the 2021-22 school calendar and make January 31st a planning day for teachers. On January 3rd, the Oregon Health Authority and Oregon Department of Education released a school health advisory to be in effect from January 3rd through January 31st in order to help with the recent surge of COVID cases due to the Omicron variant. These extra mitigation efforts are in place to help reduce the spread of COVID so that districts can prioritize in-person learning for students. This guidance includes the recommendation that schools hold events such as conferences, meetings, and fundraisers online rather than in person. In order to comply with that recommendation, for the month of January, all board meetings will be closed to the public. We know it's always preferable to be able to meet in person fully, but we want to do our part in helping to support the effort to prioritize in-person learning for our students. Superintendent Guerrero, would you like to introduce this evening's agenda item?
Yes, thank you, Chair DePass, and good evening, directors. Staff is bringing forth this recommendation to amend the school year calendar, converting January 31st to a staff planning and development day. We understand that any changes to the calendar do create a challenge for families, and we've attempted to prioritize in-person learning and activities for our students. And we're also in an exceptional circumstance, and in our attempts to support our school communities and staff at this time, especially by affording them the time necessary to engage in some meaningful planning and collaboration time, focused in fact on how to better serve our students in the midst of this pandemic. Here to speak further on the proposed calendar change and rationale is our Chief of Human Resources, Sharon Reese.
Thank you, Superintendent. Good evening, Board. Thank you for considering this resolution this evening. This is a year unlike any other, and it is requiring the school district to put forward solutions that are unlike any other year. I want to recognize at the beginning that a change to the school calendar is of no small impact to our communities and to our families. I am also a mother of 2 Portland Public School students, so I know that personally, and I know that from the feedback that we get from our families and from our communities. This has also been a school year unlike any other in that between the conditions of the pandemic, our COVID protocols and the additional work that is required to execute and implement those COVID protocols with fidelity and precision in our schools to keep our students and staff safe. And with a staffing shortage that has continued throughout this year, we have put a great deal of workload on our schools. In the past 2 weeks, for example, our staff as well as our students have needed to be absent because of COVID symptoms. We're facing an Omicron surge. In normal years, staff absences would be, classroom teacher absences would be filled at a rate around between 96 and 100%. Right now, we are looking at fill rates around 55 and 60%. What that means in a school building is that those staff are walking into other classrooms to cover for teachers that need to be absent. You might imagine that a teacher who would do that maybe once a semester, will be asked to do that once a semester, once a month, a couple times a month, is being asked to do that on a daily and certainly a weekly basis. That means there's a lot of work that is not getting done, work that is important to the functioning of our schools and the support of our students. This is it's not an easy ask to ask for a schedule change that removes a student day, but I think it is critical that we offer this up. When we asked our teachers, when we asked our administrators, and even when we asked our students, what is it you need? what we kept hearing over and over again is we need time, our staff needs time to collaborate, and our students need consistency and reliability. I'm happy to answer any questions you have about this resolution, and thank you for your consideration.
Thank you, Chief Reese. Do I have a motion and a second to adopt resolution 6433, resolution to authorize amendment of the 2021-2022 school calendar to include January 31, 2022 as a school climate workday for school staff?
So moved.
Okay.
Is there any board discussion?
I have just questions and then some information that I asked for that I think it's just useful to have in a public forum. One of the questions that I got was maybe just a brief description of what is going to happen on the day that says school climate. I think not everybody is familiar with what that means and some of the type of work that's going to happen on that day. So I don't know. Let's see what's
Or I think Dr. Proctor is ready to answer that question.
Very happy to answer that question. Thank you for the question. What we're going to do that day is going to be school-centered, administrator-led in part of the day to really focus on school climate, culture, resetting climate, reviewing and evaluating the impact of the current school's current climate plan, and then making any adjustments. It's also important for teachers to have independent planning time, in addition to some structured asynchronous learning PD opportunities. It's the juncture of it being at the end of a semester allows teachers the opportunity to calibrate on those scope and sequence, this GPC, and look at what lessons they were able to fully implement. As you know, and as we all know, with staffing shortages, subs in classrooms, teachers covering for each other, it impacts the continuity of learning for children and what children experience in the learning environment when there's a shift in the adults in the classroom. And it also impacts teachers' ability to ensure consistency and embedded practice around the curriculum. So at the juncture of the end of the semester, it's really important for teachers to evaluate what has been taught, understand where there are gaps, perhaps in lesson planning, and what lessons may have not been fully covered, and then to plan effectively how they're going to get students through the second half of the semester of the school year. So it's going to be time, yes, partly administrator-led at the school building level, teacher-directed planning time. And then we'll also have an array of asynchronous professional learning and training that teachers can, within their time, identify according to their need and schedules.
Thank you. Did that answer your question?
I had one other one, which is not necessarily about the resolution that's connected to it. So we have a chart of the impact on just total instructional hours with a column that had for TDL, which is that's the transition to distance learning.
Yeah.
Temporary
Distance learning. So it's my understanding that so it looks like there's 6 hours less for those schools that have gone of instruction for those schools that have gone to temporary distance learning, and that's the transition day. And I asked this question, and I was appreciative of the answer I got. So I think it would be, because I'm concerned about the part of our schools are going into it and into temporary distance learning, and other ones aren't, and the ones that have gone into it, this is without sort of value judgment on whether they should be in it or not, but the ones that are in it are more of our schools, that serve more of our students of color, are lower income families, and so if we have more transition, if schools are moving in and out, and we have just some of the schools doing it, are we anticipating more days, and maybe also the explanation about how we're gonna support those students who are getting actually less instruction?
So, to answer the question, to kind of go to the end where you say anticipation of more days, it really is hard to answer that question. We really look at the data at least 3 times a day as the EOC team, emergency operating center team, to evaluate where schools are. But what we're pleased is in noting, even just today, that we're really seeing some improvements in the numbers for today and what looks like for tomorrow. Staff shortages and our ability to cover so that we keep everyone in school. Our priority is to keep children in school. For the schools that had to go into TDL, we will be working with those schools to ensure that they wrap around supports for students, so that not to formally extend the semester, but to extend the grading period, or the period within which final grades are entered, to give teachers and students a little bit more time to ensure that students have full opportunity to complete assignments, complete assessments, etc. So we will be working with all of those schools on a school-by-school basis for those TDL schools. And that wrap around your question, answer it well?
Do you want to add any comment about the in-person services that we're offering in the temporary distance learning setting for our to engage?
Say, I don't know, say
The
that.
tips.
So maybe,
I'm happy-
yes,
so-
the tips, yeah, so definitely, yeah, we also, for every school that goes into TDL, we also offer temporary independent support, where students are allowed or given an opportunity to come into the school building to receive support, to receive services, to meet with, your staff. And we've partnered with some of our partners in providing those supports and services. Each school has orchestrated what it would look like. But really, the aim was to target some of our most vulnerable students while we were in TDL. So there is also that additional layer of support that we are offering while schools are in TDL, but also looking at how we can extend the grading period briefly to allow for students to get assignments, assessments, and allow teachers time to ensure that they are calibrating grades and with their students.
So if I may, Dr. Proctor,
Please.
give an example. So Fabian K8, which as directors know is currently distance learning, the school community in how they're using this limited in-person activities, they're bringing about 40 of their students today back, and these are the students who have not actively gone online over the last few days, and so the school community with some educators who are coming back in person to provide those in-person supports. So you're seeing the way in which each school community is looking at the students that need the extra support, the extra call, the extra, hey, come on in and we'll provide you support. That is happening, and that's happening across our schools. And so I just want to give you in real life what that looks like, at one of our schools.
Is there any additional questions? And if not, I've got a question It's kind of a follow-on to Director Brim Edwards' question about, is that, with all those additional supports and extension of the grading period, is that enough to make up, or are we looking at additional supports during summertime, additional resources for these kids that have been, in TDL?
So, TDL is aimed to be, temporary, and, we really made the decision, 4 to 5 days out at a time. For the sake of what, the transition may have meant, for the semester of learning before we reach the end of the grading period. The TIPS, which is the temporary in-person support, and also the grading support for schools would really sufficiently provide what's needed for that time period. Keep in mind that with the pandemic, we had children in digital and distance learning for an extended period of time, over 10 months, over a year, 18 months, and depending on, when we were able to go to hybrid as well. And so as a result, we have long-standing plans that we have within our Office of Teaching and Learning around learning acceleration. And learning acceleration is currently in play for students who need the support and who have demonstrated need for support. And that is high dosage tutoring after school. It includes a plan for summer programming as well. So to answer your question, Chair DePass, yes, that there will be opportunities for our children to get the extended support that they need through our learning acceleration.
Thank you.
Chair DePass, I had one question, and that would be, what happens if we are under the state required hours at schools? Certain things.
So right now, we really keep a close eye on the state required hours, and with TDL, we're still able to meet those hours because they count as full school days within the hours. When we had other considerations, for example, on the table, we were coming close into jeopardy, but we looked at how those minutes are and those hours are playing out, even with TDL, and we'll be able to meet them.
I'm just gonna add really quickly,
Barring
that there are a few schools that have some individual circumstances where we are tracking to maybe an hour or two short, and so those are so we are going to have to do a review for the vast majority. We will need those. We also don't know if there's an inclement weather event, right? If that would change. Of course, we have time at the end of the year to make up for inclement weather, although only one day will impact seniors, right? So there is a relatively complicated analysis that goes through, and we have to go by school. For example, one school had a guest week, right? So we have to look at that school and how that school had to shut down and what we're going to do. So there is additional analysis that will go into it, and events that may happen through the rest of the year.
That analysis also is predicated on the assumption that a class lasts the whole time period. So if you're in temporary distance learning, it's not like you're just in the class for 5 minutes and then everybody signs out. I mean, what maybe share like the expectations that have been shared with the school, if it's going to be counted as instructional hours?
Yeah, so the instructional day still holds even in TDL, and administrators and teachers understand that they are to conduct their classes in similar, according to the school schedule as outlined, and that because it was a temporary measure for distance learning, that there was no intention or expectation that schools would modify the instructional time in any way.
Can I just follow up on Jackson's question though? So what does happen? I hear you saying if we're short, we'll add a day if we can. What if we're short and no longer have? What happens? Do we get sanctioned?
I think there's a process by which the board or the district makes a request to the state to grant a waiver, if you will, if it's a particular school that is an hour short. And then the state would respond to EPS accordingly to give us the extension or give us the waiver, if you will.
Great. And I would just say, for the record, if it's obviously one school, it's an hour or two, a waiver seems appropriate. If we're falling short in multiple schools and multiple hours, I would be in favor of extending the school year. So I would just want to make sure that speaking on my own behalf, I would be interested in seeing what that would take, and I realize it's complicated.
Yes, and we have a couple of snow days, if
Right.
you will,
And
that's
even-
built in, and if we go beyond that, then yes.
I'm sort of saying if we have a snow event next week and we lose those snow days, then I think it's really important that we look at extending the school year, which again, I recognize that's not easy to do, but I think it's important.
That's not exactly possible.
It's not for seniors, but the other 11 grades can still do it, so.
We have one date for seniors, that's correct.
Do we have any more discussion before we move on to public comment? Any more board discussion? Ms. Powell, do we have anyone signed up for public comment?
Right now.
Sometimes we do that. Ms. Burke, can you hear us? Ms. Groom, can you hear us? It looks like you're on mute. Yes, we can.
Yes, we
Thank
can.
you. Good evening, Ms. Groom.
Working as hard as they can to keep the kids safe. It's just a really crazy time right now. Our secretaries are so overloaded. They could spend all day staring at the screen and entering in data to the forms that they need to turn in. I could spend quite a bit of my planning time, and I do, contacting families and checking in, making sure they have what they need for their students who are at home. And this isn't just now, this has been all year. At the beginning of the school year, the time that we had set aside during our professional teacher days to actually work on our climate plans was completely eaten up by COVID protocols, which was necessary, but then we don't have the time to work on our climate plan. So I'm really hoping that the day is flexible and responsive to the needs of the school communities. And I'm hopeful from what I heard from Dr. Proctor at the beginning of the meeting that will be the case. There will be some district directed time, but really focusing on how the district can be supportive of the school communities and the staff at that school by letting them decide the best use of that time with their administrators, I think would be really, really helpful. And then to take the bigger view, we need more direct service staff. You heard from me at the last board meeting as I testified on that. We need to spend whatever COVID relief money you can on hiring staff, even if that means layoffs down the line. Don't save the money for extra enrichment in the summer. Don't save the money for extensions. The kids need the support in the school buildings right now. So if we have the money, please do what you can to either increase salaries, to get people to apply for the jobs, or hire more people to work directly with the students. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Powell, is there additional public comment? So the board will now vote on resolution 6433, resolution to authorize amendment of the 2021-22 school calendar to include January 31st, 2022 as a school climate workday for school staff. All in favor, please indicate by saying yes.
Yes.
Yes. All opposed, please indicate by saying no. Are there any abstentions? Resolution 6433 is approved by a vote of 7-0 with Student Representative Weinberg voting.
Yes.
Great, thank you. Is there any other business at this time before we?
Madam Chair, I just wanted, I should say, before the vote, I wanted to thank the board office for compiling the really significant amount of public comment we had about this, and getting it to the board before tonight's session, and just recognition of all the people who, you know, reached out and shared their point of view about, on both sides of the issue, on this issue, because there was some substantial comment, but I want to thank the board office.
Thank you for that graciousness. Yes, thank you, board office. So the next regular meeting of the board will be held on January 25th, and this meeting is adjourned.